Hare Krishna, welcome to this special program on the systematic study of the topmost among all the Vedic scriptures, the Srimad Bhagavatam. Before we begin today's session, I shall chant a few prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayeta Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, I would like to welcome all the viewers for this special program on the systematic study of the topmost Vedic literature, the Srimad Bhagavatam. The Srimad Bhagavatam contains 12 cantos, and we are now in the study and analysis of the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam that contains 33 chapters and 1416 shlokas or verses. We have already heard in the conversation between the great personalities Vidura and Maitreya Muni. So this is the section known as Vidura Maitreya Samvada. Vidura has accepted Maitreya as his spiritual master and guide and has asked many inquiries and questions, and Maitreya has very systematically and perfectly given the knowledge about the exact process of creation of the entire material world, of the entire cosmic manifestation. So this has been very clearly and precisely explained so far. So at the beginning of creation, Lord Brahma gave birth first to the 4 Kumaras, and after that he gave birth to Rudra or Lord Shiva from between his eyebrows, and after that the 10 great personalities were born from Lord Brahma, and then appeared from Lord Brahma the first man and the first woman on the in the universe, that is Swayambhuva Manu and Shatarupa. So this is the beginning of creation. There is also the very scientific analysis and understanding of the principle of the factor of Kala, time and all its various measurements and divisions, beginning from atomic time up to the universal time. The atomic time is called Truti and the universal time is called Dviparagdha. So all this we have already analyzed in the previous chapters of the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and now beginning from the 13th chapter up to the 19th chapter, in 7 chapters of the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam is the narration of the first among the Leela avatars, the divine incarnations of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna in this material world. In fact, just by hearing about the divine activities of the Supreme Lord in his various incarnations, it is stated by Maitreya Muni in 3.14.5 that Sadhuvira Tvaya Prishtam Avatara Katham Harehe Yatvam Prichasi Martyanam Mrityupasha Vishatanim. Vidura inquired in detail about the divine pastimes of the Supreme Lord in this incarnation, and Maitreya congratulated Vidura by saying that the incarnations of the Supreme Lord, the narration about the Supreme Lord in his various incarnation, is the source of liberation from the chain of birth and death. Martyanam mrityu pasha vishatanim. The oral reception or the hearing of Avatara Katha of the incarnations of the Supreme Lord cuts the cycle of birth and death of the living entities in this material world. So now Maitreya is going to describe the activities of the first among the incarnations of the Supreme Lord in this material world. Before that, he explains the entire background and history for the cause, for the reasons for the descent of the Supreme Lord from his spiritual abode, from the spiritual world. So the four Kumaras, the first sons of Lord Brahma, once as they were wandering in different places, came upon the covering of the universe, the ultimate limits of the universe. And then after crossing that, finally the four Kumaras proceeded further and reached the realm of the spiritual world. The four Kumaras were already situated in Brahman realization. They had already attained complete freedom from all material bondage, and they were fixed in transcendence, and hence they were eligible and qualified to cross the coverings of the material world and reach the spiritual realm, the spiritual world of Vaikuntha Loka. So, as they reached Vaikuntha Loka, what they observed in the spiritual world is very beautifully explained in the 15th chapter of the 3rd canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. The 15th chapter gives us a very captivating and enchanting description of the eternal kingdom of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna, known as Vaikuntha Loka. So this is very beautifully explained, especially in verses in 13 up to 40 in the 15th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Ta ekada bhagavato vaikunthasyaamalatmanaha yayur vaikuntha nilayam sarvaloka namaskritam. After traveling across all the universes, the four Kumaras then entered into the spiritual sky because they were completely freed from all material contamination. They were Amalatmanaha, and hence they could enter the realm of Yayur Vaikuntha Nilayam, which is Sarvaloka Namaskritam, which is the residence of the Supreme Lord, the eternal abode of the Supreme Lord Krishna, and the realm of Vaikuntha is Sarvaloka Namaskritam, is worshipped by all the residents of the entire world. So now is the very beautiful and captivating information about what is there in the spiritual world. So every living entity should with great intense eagerness should receive this information about the supreme spiritual abode of the Supreme Lord. So let us try to hear a little of this description of the eternal kingdom of God. Vasanti yatra purusha sarve vaikuntha murtayah ye nimitta nimittena dharmena aradhayan harim. In the Vaikuntha planets, all the residents have a similar form to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and this is called Sarupya Mukti. All the residents of Vaikuntha Loka constantly and eternally engage in the pure loving devotional service to the Supreme Lord without any tinge of any selfish motivation. So further it is described that yatra chadya pumanaste bhagavan shabda gocharaha sattvam vishtabhya virajam svanam no mridayan vrishaha. In the Vaikuntha planets, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the original Supreme Person and who is understood only by the path of Vedic knowledge, exists in the uncontaminated mode of goodness with absolutely no place for the three modes of material nature. So, yatra naishreyasam nama vanam kamadughe dhumaihi sarvantu shribhir vibrajat kaivalyam iva murtimat. In these Vaikuntha planets there are vanam, there are many beautiful forests which are sarva ritu. In these forests the trees are not ordinary trees, but they are Kaivalyam iva murtimat. All the trees in the spiritual world are also spiritual. In fact, everything in the spiritual world is completely spiritual without any tinge of any kind of a material nature or material quality. So these trees are also desire trees. They can yield and fulfill the desires of anyone. They are also known as Kalpa Vriksha. There are some Kalpa Vrikshas even in the heavenly planets in this material world, but the desire trees of the spiritual world of the Vaikuntha Loka are Kaivalyam iva murtimat, are completely spiritual and situated in transcendence and have a completely different quality from even the desire trees of the heavenly planets. They are filled with all varieties of flowers and fruits in all seasons because everything in the Vaikuntha planets is spiritual and personal. Even the trees are murtimat. So they are personal, and further it is described that Vaimanika salalanaschcharitani shashvad gayanti yatra shamalakshapanani bhaktuhu antarjalenu vikasan madhumadhavinam gandhena khandita dhiyopyanilam kshipantaha. In the Vaikuntha planets, the various inhabitants, they travel in spiritual airplanes, Vaimanikaihi, accompanied by their consorts, and eternally sing of the character and activities of the Supreme Lord. And while singing the glories of the Lord, they deride even the presence of the blossoming fragrant Madhavi flowers that are very, very aromatic and laden with honey. So this is the nature of the spiritual world. Everyone is completely absorbed in the devotional service, in pure love towards the Supreme Lord, and they are so oblivious to any kind of a personal sense enjoyment or sense gratification that even when there is some very, very fragrant flower or any kind of a personal enjoyment, they do not appreciate it much. They find the highest bliss, infinite happiness in the service, in the loving service of the Supreme Lord. Paravatanya bhritasara sachakravaka datyuha hamsa shukatittiri barhinamyaha kolahalo viramate chiramatra muccher bringadhipe harikatham ivagayamane. when the king of bees, the Brahmara, hums in a high pitch, singing the glories of the Lord. Even the bee sings Harikatham Uchchaihi, loudly sings the glories of the Lord Shri Hari. There is a temporary lull in the noise, in the sound of the pigeon, the cuckoo, the crane, the chakravaka, the swan, the parrot, the partridge, and the peacock. All such transcendental spiritual birds stop their own singing simply to hear the glory of the Lord. So this reveals the absolute nature of Vaikuntha Loka. There is no difference either between the human beings or all have Sat Chit Ananda Vigraha. The trees, the birds, all the personalities have nothing is inanimate. There is no matter. There is no Jadavastu. Everything is Chinmaya. Everything is Satchidanandamaya. And one more very, very important quality and characteristic of Vaikuntha Loka is there is absolutely no envy. There is no jealousy. Here everyone wants to show and wants to glorify one's own qualities and capabilities, and one is in the material world, everyone is basically selfish minded, whereas in the spiritual world, even the bee, who may not have a very melodious voice in comparison to the very sweet singing cuckoos or peacocks and so many other birds that are mentioned here, like even parrots. So yet, because even the bee is singing Harikatha, all the other birds stop their singing to hear the Harikatha being sung by the Brahmara, by the bumblebee. Likewise, Mandara Kunda Kurabotkala Champakagna Punnaganaga Bakulambuja Parijataha Gandhe Shite Tulasika Bharanena Tasya Yasmim Stapassu Manaso Bahumanayanti. In the next verse is the description of the various most beautiful flowers of Vaikuntha Loka. Although there are many flowering plants like the Mandara, Kunda, Kuraba, Utpala, Champaka, Arna, Punnaga, Nagakesara, Bakula, Lily, Parijata, and they are filled with divine transcendental fragrance. Yet, they always give the highest position to Tulasika Bharanena Tasya, to Tulasi, because Tulasi is dearmost to Lord Vishnu, and therefore they always put forth the first place even among the flowers is given to Tulasi among all the fragrant flowers. Yat sankulam haripadanati matra drishter vaiduryamaraka hema mayer vimanaihi yesham brihat katitata smita shobhi mukhyaha krishnatmanam naraja adadhurutsmayadyehi. The inhabitants of Vaikuntha travel in their airplanes made of gold, emerald and various precious elements and jewels. Although crowded along with their consorts who have the most beautiful features, they can never be stimulated by any lusty desires. So in the Vaikuntha planets, there is zero lust or kama, because there is such a prevalence of the ocean. Everyone's heart is flooded with pure love, of pure prema towards by Shuddha prema towards the Supreme Lord Krishna, that there is they are all Krishnatmanam, because they are completely absorbed in the Supreme Lord Krishna, in his Shuddha prema, in his pure love. There is absolutely no chance for Rajaha or lust to have even a seed in their hearts. Shrirupini Kvanayati Charanaravindam Leelambujena Harisadmani Mukta Dosha Samlakshate Sphatika Kudya Upeta Hemni Sammajati Vayadanugrahane Nyayatnaha. All the women in the Vaikuntha planets are as beautiful as Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, and all these transcendently beautiful women, their hands playing with lotuses and their feet decorated with many tinkling bangles and anklets, they sometimes sweep the marble floors which are bedecked with the golden borders, just in order to receive the grace of the Supreme Lord Sri Hari. Although there is zero dirt, absolutely no contamination, there is no dirt that requires any cleaning, there is no need of any cleaning, yet anugrahane, simply for a loving service, the women of Vaikuntha engage in cleaning the paraphernalia of the Supreme Lord. Like this, there are many beautiful and amazing and divine descriptions of the supreme eternal abode of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna, Vaikuntha Loka. The Acharyas have recommended that every living entity should become captivated by this information, and there is so much more information, and one should intensely hanker that when would that day come when, after attaining liberation, one can go back to the spiritual world and have the direct personal association of the Supreme Lord in such a wonderful and unparalleled and the most sublime spiritual environment in the spiritual world. So in this way, now the Kumaras have just entered the spiritual world, the Vaikuntha Loka, and the abode of the Supreme Lord is guarded by the four Kumaras crossed the 6 gates of Vaikuntha Loka, and as they reached the 7th gate, which was guarded by the 2 eternal personal associates of the Supreme Lord, whose names are Jaya and Vijaya. So at that time, as they approached to enter in the actual realm of Vaikuntha Loka, they were forbidden and they were stopped by these 2 gatekeepers, Dwarapalakas, Jaya and Vijaya. So at that time, the Kumaras got offended. Although in the spiritual world there is absolutely no place for either lust or anger, yet the Kumaras became influenced by anger, and very in great fury they considered that these 2 gatekeepers of Vaikuntha Loka, because they have some kind of a discrimination and they are not allowing us to enter inside, therefore they are unfit to remain here in this spiritual world, and they pronounced a curse that let them take birth in the material world. So when the 4 Kumaras pronounced this curse, the Supreme Lord in the Vaikuntha planets, in Vaikuntha Loka, Lord Vishnu, immediately proceeded personally towards the gate of Vaikuntha Loka. Actually, the 4 Kumaras were not yet qualified to enter into the inner realms of Vaikuntha Loka, and therefore Lord Vishnu himself personally came to the door of Vaikuntha Loka to manage the entire situation that had been created by the 4 Kumaras. Now, the Supreme Lord Vishnu then approached the 4 Kumaras, and as the Supreme Lord was coming It is very beautifully explained further in the 15th chapter. When Lord Vishnu was coming, the indication was understood by the four Kumaras who were going to have the darshan of the Supreme Absolute Truth. Till now, the four Kumaras were completely fixed in the transcendence of the first level of the first order. They had realized the Brahman conception of the Absolute Truth. So they were Brahman realized sages, but they were now going to have the first audience with the ultimate aspect of the Supreme Absolute Truth, which is Bhagavan, Lord Vishnu. So as Bhagavan Narayana came towards them, the description is very beautifully explained in 3.15.43 that Tasya Ravindanayanasya Padaravinda Kinchilkamishra Tulasi Makaranda Vayuhu Antargatasva Vivarena Chakaratesham Sankshobhamaksharajusham Apichitta Tanvoho. The breeze carrying the aroma, the fragrance of the tulasi leaves from the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord Vishnu entered Tasya Aravindanayanasya Padaravinda Kinjalkamishra Tulasi. It entered the nostrils of the four Kumaras, Antargataha Swavivarena, and as they had the experience of the aroma of the tulasi leaves of the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, Sankshobham Aksharajusham. Although the four Kumaras were Aksharajusham, were firmly fixed in Brahman realization, yet Sankshobham, they were practically thrown out. They were shaken from their Brahman realization, and now they could appreciate that there is something much superior, something much higher than even the Brahman realization, and that is Bhagavan, Bhagavat Sakshatkara, or realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And they have not yet had even the darshan of the Supreme Lord. They have just smelled the aroma of the tulasi leaves of the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, and already they are completely shaken from their Brahman realization. So in this way, gradually, the four Kumaras would attain the highest realization of Bhagavat Sakshatkara. So now the Supreme Lord approached the four Kumaras and his dear eternal associates, the doorkeepers Jaya and Vijaya. The Supreme Lord immediately understood the entire situation, and just to pacify the four Kumaras, he made a personal apology on behalf of his doorkeepers and stated that although these doorkeepers would take birth in the material world, they would very soon, in a very short period of time, in just 3 births, they would again return back and be reinstated in their eternal positions as the doorkeepers of the spiritual world. Now here is after hearing these statements, even the four Kumaras acknowledged the great mistake and offense that they had committed of displaying an offensive behavior of anger in the spiritual world, which is free from all material qualities. So in this way, the Supreme Lord managed the entire situation. He pacified the four Kumaras. The four Kumaras also became very remorseful. They were now elevated to the highest realization of Bhagavad Sakshatkara. But now one may question, what about the position of the two doorkeepers, the two Dwarapalakas, Jaya and Vijaya? Why were they unnecessarily now cursed and have to take birth in the material world for 3 births? So this is actually a very deep understanding given in the Srimad Bhagavatam and explained by the great transcendentalists, by the great spiritual teachers and acharyas, that actually in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the 16th chapter it is explained that even this was an arrangement by the Supreme Lord. So why did the Supreme Lord make an arrangement for his eternal associates to fall down to the material world? Because it is repeatedly and it is a fundamental truth that anyone who goes back to the spiritual world or the eternal associates of the Supreme Lord in the spiritual world never ever fall down to the material world. In the Bhagavad Gita, repeatedly this truth has been stated that Yadgatva nanivartante tadhama paramam mama. Anyone who goes back to the Paramadhama, to Mama Paramadhama, to the supreme spiritual abode of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna, nanivartante, never again falls back to the material world. So how is it that the two doorkeepers of Vaikuntha Loka, Jaya and Vijaya, fell down to the material world? So the actual fact is that this was the will of the Supreme Lord and this was arranged by the Supreme Lord himself. And why did the Supreme Lord make such an arrangement? One reason is the Supreme Lord, whenever he comes to the material world, the Supreme Lord who is eternally situated in the spiritual world occasionally descends to the material world just to provide the supreme benefit to all the rotting living entities of this material world who are rotting in the cycle of birth and death, to provide them an opportunity for moksha or liberation and to return back to the spiritual world. So to extend his divine pastimes, anyone, any living entity who even hears about the divine pastimes of the Supreme Lord attains the highest perfection of moksha or liberation. So when the Supreme Lord descends, he does not come alone. He is accompanied by his eternal associates. So even the pastimes that he performs, he normally performs only with his eternal associates. It is just like a very important person like the Prime Minister or the King of a land, when he comes or travels to a specific or to a certain place, he won't come alone. He would be accompanied by his entourage and by his associates and managers. So likewise, when the Supreme Lord descends, he comes along with his eternal associates. So the Supreme Lord had been preparing. He had a plan to descend as an avatara, as an incarnation. And in preparation for that, he also prepared to send a few of his personal associates, Jaya and Vijaya, his Dwarapalakas, to the material world. Now in this specific Leela or pastime, sometimes the Supreme Lord, being the reservoir of all divine rasas, transcendental divine mellows, the Supreme Lord sometimes has a desire, a spiritual divine desire to have also a relationship and activity of Virya Rasa, a chivalrous relationship of fighting with someone. Whereas in the Vaikuntha Loka, normally all the devotees are engaged in pure loving service of the Supreme Lord. So there is hardly an opportunity to fight with anyone. Of course, in the supermost realm of Goloka Vrindavana, Lord Shri Krishna, with his most intimate associates like the Gopa Balakas, sometimes has even sporting fights with them. But in the Vaikuntha Loka, there is hardly an opportunity for the Supreme Lord Vishnu to engage in any kind of a Virya Rasa or in a fighting mood or attitude or activity with any of his eternal associates. So, when the Supreme Lord got this desire, he thought, let me send my own eternal associates to the material world and let them be born as very, very powerful demons. And then I shall descend in my incarnation and expand my Leela avataras, expand my divine pastimes, and also enjoy the rasa of virya, of fighting, and fighting with my eternal associates. So this is the secret of the fall down, the so-called fall down of the Dwarapalakas of Vaikuntha Loka, Jaya and Vijaya. This is by the divine will of the Supreme Lord, and therefore the conclusion is that factually there is no fall down from the Vaikuntha planets to the material world. This was just a plan and design of the Supreme Lord. So although coming to the material world, the eternal associates of Lord Vishnu are just engaging in another pastime and participating in the divine Leela of the Supreme Lord, and are just going back to the spiritual world. So actually there is no fall down, no coming to the material world in the spiritual sense or understanding. So now all this has taken place, and the Kumaras then come back to the material world, and meanwhile here in the material world there is the great sage and personality by name Kashyapa, and Kashyapa has got many wives. One among the wives of Kashyapa is Diti. Diti is one of the wives of Kashyapa. So once it so happened that when Kashyapa in his ashrama was living with Diti, Diti was somehow agitated with intense lusty desires, and she approached Kashyapa in order to fulfill her lust. But Kashyapa rejected her proposal by saying that the time is not proper, it is the Sandhya Kala, the evening time, and to indulge in any kind of a relationship, a physical relationship at this time is never recommended. So this is actually a very exact, a very important science that is explained in the Vedic literatures, known as the science of conception of a child. So just like the quality of seed and the way a seed is put and how you take care of it will give a specific quality of a plant or tree and finally the fruit. So we all can know that even in agriculture, to get a good fruit, how you have to select the best seed and how you have to sow it and then how it grows. So it requires a lot of procedure and care. And in today's world, we have become so foolish, we have become so ignorant, we don't have even this much intelligence to know that we just indulge in sexual activity in any way. There is no procedure, there is no method for it. We have become so ignorant. So actually there is a specific method and procedure for the science of conception, and it is known as Garbhadana Samskara. So one has to follow the right time and method and procedure, and then if a man and woman conceive a child, then it will be right from the birth, the child will be endowed with many divine qualities. So that science is almost lost in present day, and therefore the spiritual quality of children that are born is very, very low. The children that are born today, because they are born without any Garbhadana Samskara, without any proper method and procedure, they are born of very, very low divine and spiritual qualities. So therefore we should learn from this part of the Srimad Bhagavatam that if we do not follow the right method and procedure for conception, the result is going to be revealed very shortly. The quality, the kind of children that would be born. So now, Diti was not to be satiated. She was so much agitated by lusty desires that she told Kashyapa that I am unable to wait any longer, and please fulfill my desires right now. So although she was forbidden by Kashyapa, yet when she insisted, it is the duty of a husband as per the Dharma Shastras to satisfy the lust of one's wife, and therefore now Kashyapa engaged in a physical relationship with Diti. Diti, who was not in a purified consciousness, her consciousness was in a contaminated state, and even the time was inappropriate. And what was the result of that? After their union, Kashyapa admonished Diti that because of your haste and great lust, the children that would be born, you would give birth to two children, that is to twins, and they would be the greatest demons in the universe, in this world. So Diti was very, very Diti became very repentful of her actions after their union, and begged pardon from Kashyapa Rishi and to Lord Shiva and to the Supreme Lord Vishnu to have engaged in a physical union with the wrong frame of mind, with the wrong consciousness, and at the wrong time. So observing the repentance of Diti, Kashyapa then assured her that although your sons would be the greatest demons, I give you the benediction that your grandson would be the greatest among the Mahabhagavatas, the greatest among the pure devotees of the Supreme Lord. So now it is explained also that Teva amushyavadanasita padmakosham udvikshya sundarataradhara kundahasam labdha punaraveksha tadiyam angri dvandvam nakharunamani shrayanam nidadhyuhu. Diti was given the assurance by Kashyapa Muni that was given the assurance by Kashyapa first that even your sons, the twin sons who would be very demoniac in nature, they would be personally killed by the Supreme Lord. And the second benediction given by Kashyapa was that your grandson would be a great Mahabhagavata, would be a great pure devotee of the Supreme Lord Vishnu. In fact, your grandson would be such a great devotee that Kashyapa uvacha krita shokanutapena sadyah pratyavamakshanad bhagavati urumanacha bhavemayapi chadarat putrasyaiva cha putranam bhavitaikaha satam matah gasyanti yad yashashuddham bhagavad yashasa shamam. Because of your shoka tapa, because of your lamentation, penitence and proper deliberation, and also because of your unflinching faith in me, your husband, your adoration for Lord Shiva, and your faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, one of the sons of your son, that is one of your grandson, would be a great pure devotee of the Lord. And can anyone guess who would be that grandson? That is Prahlada. So, and his fame would be broadcast on an equal level with that of the Supreme Lord. Yogher hemeva durvagnam bhavaishyanti sadhavaha nirvaidadibhiratmanim yatshilam anuvagtitum. The entire world would follow in the footsteps of that great pure devotee Prahlada. All the saintly persons will try to emulate his character by practicing freedom from all duality and animosity. Yat prasadat idam vishwam prasidadi yadatmakam sasvadvig bhagavan yasya toshyate ananyaya drisha. Everyone, the entire world would be pleased with that great pure devotee, with Prahlada, because the Supreme Lord is always satisfied with his devotee. So in this way there is a lot of glorification of the great pure devotee grandson made by the grandfather Kashyapa to Diti. So hearing these statements of Kashyapa, Diti was pacified, because although her sons would be demons, they would be personally killed by the Supreme Lord, and her grandson would be a great pure devotee of the Supreme Lord Vishnu of Narayana. So now, after some time, after the conception of Diti by Kashyapa, Diti became pregnant, and after a long period of time, she gave birth to the twin children who were the very, very powerful demons. Their names were given by Kashyapa Muni as Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. So the two demons that were born of Diti and Kashyapa were Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. And as they grew, they began to terrorize the entire world, the entire universe, and they conquered all the directions, and everyone, including the powerful administrative devatas, were afraid of the atrocities of Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. The names of these two demons are also very significant and meaningful. Hiranyaksha means, in Sanskrit, Hiranya means gold and Aksha means the eye. One who is always searching for gold or material wealth or material possessions. One who is always aspiring and always trying to increase one's material possessions like gold and other things is called as Hiranyaksha. Likewise, Hiranyakashipu, the meaning of Hiranyakashipu is one who is always reveling in the two things that are Hiranya and Kashipu. One who is always enjoying in wealth, and Kashipu means soft bed, which means in the sense gratification with women. So one who is always engaged in enjoyment of wealth and women is called Hiranyakashipu. Now, by this calculation, by this parameter, by this yardstick, if we measure ourselves, actually in the beginning of creation, there were two, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, in this material world. Whereas in today's scenario, practically everyone is a tiny Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. Hiranyaksha represents great greed, and Hiranyakashipu is the symbol of great greed, passion, and lust. So practically everyone in today's world is filled with these qualities. So now Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu began to terrorize all the living beings of this world. Once Hiranyakashipu, being very proud of his great strength, he conquered over all the directions and went to the Svargaloka, to the heavenly planets. Now, when Hiranyaksha entered the heavenly planets in Svargaloka, the news had already reached the inhabitants, the denizens of heaven, and being very fearful, all of them had already vacated, had run away from the heavenly planets, from Svargaloka. So when Hiranyaksha reached Svargaloka, he was surprised that there is no one. It is completely empty. It was vacant. So such was the terror of Hiranyaksha. Hiranyaksha, finding no one capable of fighting with him, capable of giving him a fight, in the Bhuloka, went to Svargaloka, but even Svargaloka was completely empty. And then Hiranyaksha, his hands, his entire system was itching to fight with someone. So then he entered into the Rasatala planets, he entered into the great mighty ocean and went to the capital city of Varuna Deva, the Devata who presides over the waters. The name of his capital is called Vibhavari. So Hiranyaksha reached Vibhavari, and there he went and paid full obeisances to Varuna Deva. So his offering respects and obeisances is actually in great sarcasm. Hiranyaksha asked Varuna that I have come here and am begging for one thing, please fulfill my desire. So Varuna asked him, what do you ask for? So Hiranyaksha said that I am begging, please fight with me. So this was the very lowly, sarcastic request of Hiranyaksha to Varuna Deva. So Varuna at that time replied, he very tactfully and diplomatically replied to Hiranyaksha that actually I have now become old and weak and I am no match for you, so you will not have a good fight if we have a battle. But don't be very proud, Hiranyaksha. Very soon you'll have a fight with the Supreme Lord himself, who is going to take a divine incarnation, and at that time he would surely defeat you and you will be slain to to death by the Supreme Lord. When Hiranyaksha heard these words of Varuna, instead of becoming fearful of his imminent death, he did not even consider that. He heard that there would be somebody who would be a contender, he would have someone to fight a battle with. He became very happy, and he asked Varuna, where would I find Lord Vishnu? So Varuna gave him some directions. So Hiranyaksha went like that. Later he met the great sage Narada, and he further inquired from Narada, have you seen Lord Vishnu anywhere? And at that time Narada further directed Hiranyaksha. So now at that time, what had happened was, because of the gold rush of Hiranyaksha, the earth, Bhuloka, had slipped from its position and had fallen into the Garbhodaka ocean. The Garbhodaka ocean is inaccessible to all the spiritual, to all the material adventures of the modern material scientists. The Garbhodaka ocean is not any of the 7 oceans of the Pacific Ocean or the Atlantic Ocean or the Indian Ocean. So the Garbhodaka ocean is so far away. It is a different ocean. It is not an ocean on the earth. It is the half portion of the Brahmanda, and the earth had fallen into the Garbhodaka ocean. Now, when Manu and Shatarupa, who were born from Lord Brahma, inquired from Brahma that we are supposed to create all the living entities, but we find that the place for creation of all the human beings and various living beings is missing. It is not there. So even Brahma suddenly observed that Bhuloka had fallen down, and Brahma then deeply contemplated and was unable to find a solution. What should be done in this great time of emergency when the Bhuloka had submerged into the Garbhodaka ocean? When Brahma was thus in deep contemplation, suddenly from the nostril of Lord Brahma appeared a tiny creature the size of his thumb, and suddenly then expanded into a gigantic form. And everyone, Lord Brahma and all the great sages, Manu, Shatarupa, were completely astonished by this sudden appearance of a divine personality who was in the form of a Varaha, in the form of a boar. So this is the first Leela Avatara of the Supreme Lord as Varaha Avatara. Lord Brahma could not immediately recognize about who this personality was, but with a little more contemplation and meditation, all the great sages and Lord Brahma could understand that this is none other than the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Absolute Truth, Lord Krishna, Lord Vishnu, who has appeared to deliver the earth and all the living entities, and to help everyone in the continuation of the process of creation. So now all of them offered wonderful prayers to Lord Varaha, who then with great speed he pierced through the Garbhodaka ocean and entered in the depths of the ocean and found the earth, the Bhuloka. Lord Varaha now raised and lifted the Bhuloka, the earth, on his tusks, and then as he was about to come out of the Garbhodaka ocean, he was approached by Hiranyaksha. Hiranyaksha had been guided by Varuna and Narada, and he reached the place where Lord Varaha was coming out and lifting the earth. So Hiranyaksha also could understand that this personality must be Lord Vishnu, and he challenged him, stop and give me a fight, don't run away, don't escape from here. But Lord Varaha, without giving any kind of an attention to Hiranyaksha, first came out and placed the Bhuloka, the earth, in its right location, and then turned towards Hiranyaksha. Then there was a very, very terrible fight between Lord Varaha and Hiranyaksha. So in this way, the Supreme Lord Vishnu enjoyed the rasa of Virya rasa of fighting. In this battle, Varaha and Hiranyaksha, as they were fighting, Lord Varaha had been enjoying the rasa of fighting, of battle, and therefore he was also giving a chance. Although he could in a moment finish Hiranyaksha, sometimes he would be a little on the back foot, on the losing side, and give a chance to Hiranyaksha to gain the upper hand. So at that time the Devatas used to get bewildered, and finally while fighting, Lord Varaha, it seemed to appear that when Hiranyaksha gave a very powerful blow, the mace, the gada of Lord Varaha fell down, and all the Devatas who were watching this fight became very, very scared and afraid. So they all, Lord Brahma prayed to Lord Varaha that, my dear Lord, you may continue your pastimes, but our sincere, our humble request is that enough of your leela, of your play with Hiranyaksha, now you please kill him. So observing the anxiety of Lord Brahma and of the Devatas, Lord Varaha finally decided to slay this demon Hiranyaksha. Finally, just with a blow by his left hand, by his left palm, when Lord Varaha struck at Hiranyaksha immediately started oozing blood from his mouth, and immediately, with just one blow from Lord Varaha, he lay down dead. And at that time, Lord Varaha was praised with many divine and transcendental prayers by the Devatas and by Lord Brahma. So one of the prayers is recorded in 3.13.34 of the Srimad Bhagavatam, that Rishaya uchuhu jitam jitam te jitayagna bhavana traim tanum swam paridhunvate namaha yadaroma ghagte shunililyuradhayas tasmai namah karana sukarayate. So there are many beautiful prayers, and this is one of the prayers that all the great sages said. Jitam jitam te ajita, O unconquerable Lord of all lords, all glories and all victories unto you. You are moving in your form as the personified Vedas, and in the hair holes of your body all the oceans are submerged. Now for the reason to uplift the earth, you have assumed the form of a boar. Likewise in 2.7.1 we also find another beautiful prayer to Lord Varaha by Lord Brahma, who says, Yatrodyatak shiti talodharanaya bibhrad Kraudim tanum sakala yagnamayi manantaha antar mahagnava upagatamadi daityam tam damshtrayadrimeva vajradharo dadara. The Supreme Lord appeared to lift the earth and place it in its right position, and he slayed the Adi Daitya, the first demon of this universe, that is Hiranyaksha. So in this way, the Supreme Lord displayed his wonderful, divine, transcendental pastimes in his incarnation as Varaha, and after that, later, Lord Varaha gave his supreme blessing, his supreme mercy to his greatest devotee, that is Bhudevi. Bhudevi, Bhumata, is one of the consorts of the Supreme Lord Vishnu, and the entire Varaha Purana are the instructions given by Lord Varaha to Bhudevi, the consort of Lord Vishnu. So that is the subject matter of Varaha Purana. So in this way, the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam very, very beautifully narrates the superhuman, the extraordinary, the wonderful pastimes of Lord Varaha. Just think that the earth, which is so huge and vast, with so many mountains and rivers, and can anyone even lift a Mount Everest, one of the mountains of this earth? Does any personality have the capacity and strength and capability to lift one of the mountains of this earth? Now Lord Varaha lifted the entire earth and brought it and placed it in its right place and location. So what is the power, the strength and the gigantic form of Lord Varaha? This is not very difficult to understand, because Lord Vishnu is Ananta. He has got infinite power, energy, strength, and everything is infinite about him. Just by his glance he creates the entire universe. So what to speak of lifting the earth from the subterranean region that it had fallen? So such are the superhuman, the divine, the extraordinary pastimes of the genuine incarnation of the Supreme Lord. Yet there are the most foolish, the greatest cheaters, the greatest frauds in this world, in this age, especially in the Kali Yuga. The greatest frauds are those who claim that they are the incarnation, the avatara of the Supreme Lord. So if they are an incarnation, please display the power of lifting the earth, the entire earth, or even a small mountain, just like Krishna lifted the Govardhanagiri on his little finger. So can any of these so-called avatars lift even a small hillock? So this is practically impossible for all these fraudsters and bogus incarnations. And it is very, very unfortunate that there are millions of people who are equally ignorant and foolish, who also follow these and accept these frauds as avatars or incarnations. So one should never be misguided or misled by such bogus incarnations, and should follow the path of the revealed scriptures, and then one can be properly guided in the understanding about the truth about the Supreme Lord and his various incarnations. So if you have any questions about today's subject matter, you are most welcome to post it in the WhatsApp group or in the comments box. Please do like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and please do join us for the next session of the study of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.